Carol, let's get started. Okay, well, welcome. I'm Yvonne Schwab, ACG Silicon Valley CEO. I'm excited to present you today's event, Life Mastermind, Risks and Solutions 2021. For those of you new to ACG Silicon Valley, we are the leading business-to-business networking organization in Silicon Valley, providing connections, thought leadership, and enabling personal and organizational growth. ACG Silicon Valley is offering a variety of virtual events in the coming months. Next week, we have our e-lunch with all the other California ACG chapters. A great way to network. If you haven't tried it, give it a chance. Next Thursday, we have our M&A circle on the topic of what to do when a SPAC calls. Our CTO circle in May will be on California consumer privacy. And we will also have an event on supply chain upheaval. Many more events to follow in May and June, so we invite you to visit our new and improved our website, acgsv.org, to see the full calendar. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our speaker today, Deberah Bringelson. She is an internationally recognized business growth and empowerment authority, author, and keynote speaker. For over 30 years, she has helped CEOs in 17 countries around the globe to take control of their businesses and grow their revenue from 100% to more than 3,500%. Whether they're struggling with leadership deficits, human resources, communication problems, strategic planning, strategic messaging, sales problems, or all of the above, Deberah's proprietary formula has worked for them and can work for you too. So I'm very excited to hear more about her formula. So Deberah.
Hi, it's so great to see everyone today, or see some of you. So thank you so much, Yvonne, for inviting me to be here, and Carol for all of your support as we've prepared for today. I'm really looking forward to it. So we're going to move a little bit quickly because I've got a lot for you. Some of the biggest problems that companies are seeing right now, my clients, and also the research shows how I recommend solving those problems. I'm going to teach you one thing today, and I want this to be a conversation, so if you have questions, ask. But I'm going to teach you one thing today, and I promise you that this will be a strategy that you can use virtually with any issue that you're facing in your business right now. And speaking of which, for those of you who are facing challenges, which, you know, we in business always are, if you could put in the chat, if you could solve one thing today, what your biggest challenge, if you could solve it today and it would make your business and your life better, could you just put that in the chat? And then maybe Carol, when you get a few of those, or Yvonne, when you get a few of those, if you could let me know what those are, because I really want this to be relevant. And the other thing that I want to say at the outset, you know, I know a lot of these kinds of events, you invite somebody to come and share their knowledge, and at the end, there's always that opportunity to buy. That is not the case today. I have absolutely nothing that I'm going to offer you for sale. I do have something that is quite powerful that my VIP clients are using to get their businesses restarted, get their employees unstuck, and really connect with their buyers. I'm going to give you a link to that, or Carol's going to give you a link to that, and you can download it for free. I'll tell you a little bit about it as it goes, but I just wanted to set everybody's minds at ease that there will not be anything for sale today. Okay, so Carol, did anyone jump in with what their biggest challenges are?
No. So far, we have no takers yet.
Okay. Okay. So.
Oh, yeah, there's one. Larry says, what does the sales process look like after the pandemic? Less in-person and more Zoom.
Okay, that's an excellent question, and it will be specific, frankly, to your business and to your buyers. And that is, I'm going to take you through how to figure that out. this is where all of my VIP clients start. It's responsible for growing their revenue from 100% to more than 3,500%. And I have more than one of those that achieved more than 3,500% growth. And I'm going to take you through that. And then I'm going to give you at the end the strategy that you can use it for your particular question and for any issues that anyone might be facing. So in preparation for today, I did my own research, and what we're going to talk about are the biggest risks that are costing you time, sales, and money. And obviously, Larry, you know, the sales process is a huge part of that. And this is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the cost and the risk to the CEO and the company, your buyer costs, what they're doing and saying that are different in 2021 than they were last year or the year before, and employee costs, you know, poor leadership, paralyzed employees. I have, as Yvonne said, you know, worked with companies in 17 countries around the world. This is just a little sample of them. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And the results are what I'm all about. You know, I'm not interested as a business consultant in getting somebody's business. I'm interested in keeping their business, and what that is results. So, you know, the 110% growth in 10 months, 10xing your leads, your sales, your revenue, those are the kinds of things that are important to me. So the biggest risks to companies in 2021 are, you know, concerns about COVID. Will it come back? Will there be rules in place, extra costs in place that you're going to have to deal with? Are we potentially headed into a recession? Big concerns about recruitment and retention, potential government regulation, and how to handle teams returning to the physical workplace. Some want to, some don't want to. Yvonne and I were talking before we got started about Zoom fatigue, which I really get. So these are the biggest outside risks in 2021. Now, some of them you can't do anything about controlling them, like government regulation, but you can develop a strategy for how you deal with them. And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today. CEOs have been telling me that they, you know, even before last year, a lot of them felt like they were doing everything themselves, and even more of them are saying that now. You know, they hire people to be in leadership positions or management positions, and they hire teams, but they're still doing the sales themselves, making the decision themselves, you know, figuring it out themselves, because they're surrounded by leaders who are, the words that I'm hearing are frozen or paralyzed. They can't or they won't lead, they won't make decisions. And CEOs, if you're a CEO, you know this, you're under greater stress than you ever have been. Almost 84% of executives report stress-related illness. And for CEOs, that's 100%. Chronic stress, it wreaks havoc on your body. And one of the most important things for you in your life is reducing that stress, but in reality, it's important for you to reduce that for the sake of your business as well. You know, we need to be fully present in our business, and when we're dealing with, you know, stress-related illnesses like diabetes and heart disease and sleep issues, that affects your ability to participate fully in your business, and it also affects your ability to participate fully in your life and your family. You know, one of the things that trickles down to our employees and to our families is stress. And children are saying that their real problem is their parents' stress and how it's being passed down to them. So this is important to us on many levels. And in terms of how it affects our business, did you know that when you're trying to make a decision, and if you're under massive stress, it actually shrinks your brain, so you're less effective in making decisions. And one of the things that I recommend to my clients when you're feeling that stress, when you're getting angry or you're noticing that you're stress eating or whatever your stress response is, stop for 1 second, literally 1 second, and take a nice deep breath. That actually affects your body's response to stress. So the second area is your buyers. Your buyers have changed, and what they're thinking and what they're doing has changed. 72% of buyers say that your ability to solve their pain, so listen to that, their pain is very important. 56% say your sales team's ability to demonstrate knowledge about their company. So when your sales team's on a call and they're just talking generally about your product or service, your buyers are not interested in that. They want to know, what do you know about my company, my pain, and how are you going to solve that? That takes a lot more thought from your sales team than just getting on and saying, well, let me tell you about my widget or my service. And 65% say that your knowledge of their industry, their specific industry, is vital. So what are they doing that's different? 73% are using more sources. So before, if your sales team made a presentation somewhere or made a cold call or whatever your process is, that's not working anymore because people are extensively researching. They're afraid that they don't have the resources that they need to buy all of the things that are being thrown at them. So they're going to make more intelligent, more thoughtful decisions. They're spending more time researching before they buy. And they're doing a more detailed ROI analysis. So you have to be prepared for that. You know, if I'm going to pay you $10,000, just as an example, for a product or service, what's the return on my investment going to be for that? Is it just a wish and a prayer, which a lot of these things are, or is there some substance behind it? And one of the things that makes salespeople crazy, but it's true, the sales cycle has lengthened. So what can you do to shorten that cycle? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then the third category of threat is that your team is more stressed than ever. We all are. Every single one of us is more stressed than ever. And that stress is causing paralysis. I'm afraid to make a decision because I don't know the right decision, and I'm afraid it's going to be wrong, which is in part related to what's going on in the world and could be significantly related to how you handle leadership decision making. A lot of companies don't allow leaders to make bad decisions, and that's how we learn. So I'm not saying that, you know, somebody makes several multi-million-dollar bad decisions that you don't do something about it. But what I am saying is have a plan in place for how you deal with decision making and allow people to grow. People are emotionally drained, which leads to bad decisions. They're stressed, they're frozen, and a lot of them are angry. A lot of them are very angry, and they don't know what to do with that anger. You know, can you be angry at a virus? Can you be angry at the government? Sure, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And where this is being directed is that employees are feeling their rage at the company and other employees. And, you know, so what? You know, their rage, right? They're angry. But that increases your risk of lawsuits and turnover, all of which have immense costs on a number of levels. So it's definitely a threat that we want to deal with. The other thing that I think a lot of, especially bigger companies, haven't really taken into account is that employees are worried about more than your business. I mean, you want them to show up, We all want them to show up. I've been a CEO just like you. You want your employees to show up and invest their intellectual capital, their time, their enthusiasm in your company. And they're worried about what the financial impact is going to be on their lives. You know, are they going to keep their jobs? Are they going to lose their home? They're concerned about their parents. You know, if they have aging parents who are at risk, they're concerned about their children, what kind of world their children are growing up in, and they're also worried about their communities and their friends. All of these three things are affecting, whether you recognize it or not, they're affecting your workplace, your buyers, your revenue, your company, and frankly, your future, our future. And so what's happening? Companies are overwhelmed with people trying to get their hands in your wallet. You know, they're experiencing all of the things that we just talked about too. They're afraid also, they're under stress too. So what do I have that I could throw out into the marketplace and get somebody to buy it to relieve some of my financial pressure? That's what's going on in their minds. So they're calling you, emailing you, trying to get you to buy their product or service. Now, when I'm not clear if you can all see each other or know who's in the room, but I looked at the list of people who had registered for today, and all of your companies are different. You're different sizes, you have different numbers of employees, you're in different industries. So all of these things that are being thrown at you, are they right for you? Or are they things that people are just saying, well, I have this, so I'm gonna get myself out there and try to sell it. And what happens is, because you're under stress and not necessarily knowing what the right thing is to do, your employees are under stress, they don't know what to do, and you're getting all of these things and you're in this fear mode. You're just like, okay, well, maybe I need to buy that. Maybe I need to buy that. And if it's something that's generically being sent to the world, you don't all have the same problems. So you don't all need the same solutions. And most of them are going to miss the target of what you actually need. So what if you could increase your leads, your sales, your revenue? Sounds good. But at the same time, you could also unstick your leaders, unstick your employees, increase their productivity and their decision-making, increase their collaboration, get them showing up excited about what they're doing for your company, for your team, for your buyers. What if you could do all of that? So let's talk about your ideal buyers. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to run you through a little exercise as an example. And then I'm going to give you, as I said at the end, a gift of a strategy that you can use for any problem, and you'll have that. It's all done for you. I've even written the emails and the checklists and given you training videos to make sure, and they're short, like 5 minutes. So it's not, 40 hours of Deborah talking, to help you do this for any problem. So the first thing I'm going to tell you, and I know that you're going to disagree with me, but I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I will tell you, your ideal buyers, and hear the word ideal, because ideal buyers are different than regular buyers. Your ideal buyers do not care about your product or service. I promise you that. They're not laying in bed at night saying, well, if I could just have the right printer, life would be great. Or if I could just have the right website, all my problems would be solved. They're not doing that. So I want to tell you, give you an example of how this works. This is a client of mine She's a real estate developer. And for the full 12-month period before she and I met, her revenue was $0. So in the year one of her company, you know, beginner's luck actually is a thing in business. In year one of her company, she made $17 million. In year two, she made $0. So think about that. How would you feel if your company made $0 for 12 months? Well, that's where she was. Because she was selling her houses on things like talking about granite and lighting and square footage and all of the things that you typically think you should be talking about when you're trying to sell a house. So I did an analysis, and I do this with every client. I did an analysis of her ideal buyers. What did they care about? They didn't care about having a house. They had a house. They liked their house. They were not interested at all in her houses. So come back into the room if you're thinking about other things and really listen to this, because it's key. My analysis of her ideal buyers was that they were in a higher risk category for diabetes, heart disease, and their children were at a greater risk for teen drug use and other potentially dangerous behaviors. So we changed our strategy and stopped talking to them about houses. And we started talking to them about diabetes, heart disease, and teen drug use. I'm going to tell you how that makes sense, because I know it doesn't. And Larry, this kind of goes directly to the question that you asked. When she was talking about all of those house things, she wasn't talking to very much of her market. And this is what we call the buying pyramid. At any given time, your market, only 3% of them are interested in what you're selling. So when we've surveyed audiences, whether it's online or in person or whatever, you know, who's in the market right now for a new computer? Who's in the market right now for a new car, a new house, or a particular service? About 3%, could be 2, could be 4, but about 3% are in the market right now looking for what you're offering. What does that mean to you? When you think 3% are interested in buying your product, what does that 97% mean to you? Anyone? And you, Larry, if you want to talk, just unmute yourself.
Thinking about it.
Well, what it means is, I know where you're going with this because you've seen this buying pyramid before, right?
No.
No? So what it means to you is right now, your revenue is only 3% of your potential revenue. You're losing out on 97% of your potential revenue before you even start. So think about what you made if 2020 was a normal year for you. Think about 2020, or if it wasn't, think about 2019. Think about what you made in 2019. Whatever that was about 3% of your potential revenue. So everybody says to me, Deborah, how can you get these crazy, stupid results? How can you increase somebody's revenue 100% or 3,500%? And the reason is because I just open up the market to that 97% that's sitting there waiting for my clients. The other thing is, where's your greatest competition? Is it in the 97% that nobody's going after? Or is it in the 3% that everyone's going after? Oops, I just gave you the answer, didn't I? Your greatest competition's in that 3%. So everybody who's in the market to buy your product right now, they're in that 3%. But Larry, you're right. The next 7%, which is easier to get, is open to it. They're thinking about it. They're not going to buy right now, but maybe in 6 months. So they may have an interest in, they may be starting to do their research. And then the next 30%, they're not thinking about it at all. They're not thinking about you. They don't care about you on any level. The next 30% think they're not interested. And then the final 30% says, I am definitely not interested. But they're definitely not interested doesn't mean that they don't want or need what you're offering. It just means they don't understand the value of having it. So let's say, for example, in the client I was talking about previously, the people who were definitely not interested is like, no, I'm not interested in buying a house. I'm not doing it. Go away. Don't talk to me. They didn't know the value of what they would get from buying our houses. Hadn't occurred to them because we hadn't told them. So let's go back for 1 second before we move forward, and you think about your 2019 revenue. Let's say, just being generous, that you were in the top here of this buying pyramid, and you made your revenue in 2019 out of 10% of your market. You don't have to get, I mean, I always want to get the entire pyramid, you know, it's that competition in me, I guess, but you don't have to get the full pyramid. You don't have to get in 100% of your market. You only have to get down to this next 30%, the people who aren't thinking about it, to 4x your revenue. So do your math. Whatever you made in 2019, how delightful would it be if you could easily 4x that? And what would that be? What would that mean to you? What would that mean to your company? What would that mean to your family, your stress level? Look, there's a lot more to having a successful company than just revenue. But I don't know, 4xing the revenue would be pretty delightful, wouldn't it be? So when we talk about Deberah wanting to go and get the whole pyramid, that means going and getting the people who are definitely not interested. And my most fun experience, I don't know, I don't think Yvonne told you, and I didn't either. I spent most of my career in Silicon Valley. I know there's somebody here from Intel, and one of my biggest heroes, my greatest mentors, I learned a lot of what I know at his knee, was Bob Noyce, the founder of Intel. And I'm actually getting a little emotional because I adored him. So I spent most of my career in Silicon Valley. And a few years ago, I got a call from then Mayor Gavin Newsom, who said, Richard Branson is looking for a new headquarters for his Virgin America Airlines. And there's a competition between 6 cities. Would you take it on and get him to make his headquarters at San Francisco Airport? And I'd never done anything like that. I didn't know at the time that they were giving me a $0 budget, 0 staff. Basically, I was on my own. But I just, do as I typically do and said, sure, yes, I'll do it. Richard Branson was in the bottom, definitely not interested. He was a hard no. I didn't know it at the time. I only found this out after the deal had closed, and I had become friends with some of the people on his team. And they said to me, we never intended to come to California. It was only in the mix because we wanted to use it to get better offers from the 5 other areas. We were never coming to California. At the time, for those of you who remember, our governor was being recalled, Gray Davis was being recalled, Arnold Schwarzenegger hadn't been elected yet. The California Chamber of Commerce was trying to influence the election for Schwarzenegger. So they were running full page ads regularly in the New York papers, and Branson was in New York a lot of the time, reading that with his morning coffee. So they had never had any interest at all in coming to California. How did I get him to go from a hard no to what we would say buying now, to signing the deal? And by the way, I'll tell you, I had no staff other than 1 assistant. I did have 47 volunteers who had other jobs. So think about how hard it is to get your employees to follow your lead and do the work. And, you know, these people were not being paid by me. They had real jobs. So the work they did for me was after hours and on weekends. I'll give you one example. My tech guy, the guy who provided all of my technical support, he was actually the safety officer for Caltrain. And he was doing all of my technical support. We had no governor. San Francisco gave me no budget. And all of the other areas were throwing incentives like hundreds of millions of dollars at Branson. I didn't have access to any of that. It wasn't legally, I couldn't have had access to it. And they weren't going to give it to me even if we could. So how did we take him from being a hard no to buying now? And this is how, Larry, to answer your question, this is how you set up your funnel. So the first thing that we do, and by the way, did everybody download the worksheets, the workbook that is, I think it's in the chat? This is in the chat for you because we're not going to be able to go through this. This actually takes time to go through, but I highly recommend you download this, go through it yourself with your team. But what I did and what I recommend you do for your ideal buyers is you write down 5 of your current ideal buyers that you love. And you're going to use these 5 people throughout, and they're people and companies, but we're going to focus on the people because people make intellectual decisions about what they buy, but they also make decisions from their body, how they're feeling. And we want to know that. We want to know what their stressors are so that we can help heal them, for lack of a better word, of their stressors. So who are your 5? And you may want to write this down as we're talking, but you know, if you could have these 5 buyers that you already sell to, and that was the only type of person and company that you had, who would they be? And then what do they have in common? And when we talk about what they have in common, sure, it's fine. You know, most people say, well, I know my ideal buyer, you know, they're women and they're X age and they do this and that. Yeah, fine. That's all surface stuff. But what do they really have in common? Things like they're single parents, or they're re-entering the job market, or whatever. I want you to get deeper with this. What do they have in common at a deeper level? And then what are the things that's really keeping them up at night? So if they're, let's say your ideal buyers are CEOs of other companies. What are they laying in bed thinking about? They're not laying in bed thinking about your product or service. Remember, we already talked about that. They're thinking about, my revenue is decreased. How am I going to pay my employees? Who do I have to lay off? Am I going to have money to send my kid to college? Am I going to lose my house? Whatever it is they're thinking about, you have to get to know them at a deeper level. And that was what we did with real estate company and what we did with Richard Branson. What do they care about at a deeper level? And by the way, when I did the Branson one, I only had one ideal buyer because he was my only target. But what did he care about? You know, he cared about things like the fact that it's hard to start an airline in the United States. It's 10 times as hard to start an airline in the United States if you're not a US citizen. How is he going to train his employees? How is he going to he's known for being edgy and different. How is he going to make his company edgy and different? All of those things are things that he cares about. And then what are the things that they're saying to themselves? You know, some of it is strategic. You know, they're saying to themselves, this is the problem that I want to solve. But there's a lot of self-doubt. There are a lot of things, you know, can I do this? I've done it before. You know, look, every time I work with a new client, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Every time I work with a new client, I go through a period of, oh my God, can I do it again? Oh my God, can I do it again? What if I don't do it again? What if this is my first failure? They're all going through this too, and similar things. So what are your ideal buyers saying to themselves? The exact words. And here's where I want to stop for a second. And I want to say to you, don't do this exercise yourself. Do it with your leadership team, and have your leadership team do it with their teams. Assuming that you're a company that has, you know, multiple divisions or whatever, have your leadership team do it with them first so they understand how to do it, and then have them do it with their teams. And a lot of people say, well, you know, look, I don't need to bring in the guys from the floor. I worked with a company once and that did stainless steel kitchens for like Starbucks and restaurants. And we did an exercise like this with some of the problems they were having. And he said, you know, I don't need the guys who are cutting the steel to have this conversation with us. Yes, you do. Here's why. One, you never know where brilliance comes from. I mean, every time I go into a company, I always find brilliance in the most unexpected places. Secondly, you don't know where your potential next leaders are coming from. In this particular case with the stainless steel company, they needed some leaders. We identified some people from the floor who were brilliant leaders to fill those spots. So don't do this alone. Take the gift that I'm going to give you at the end and get your leaders involved and get them to get your employees involved. The other thing is, remember I told you when I was working on the deal with Richard Branson, I had no employees. I had 47 volunteers that I had to inspire because I wasn't paying them. I had to inspire them to work all weekend and work until midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. The way I did that was involving them at the level where they felt like they made a difference. Like they felt like what they were doing was really important. They were energized. They were excited. You know, I would say, hey, look, we need to work all weekend. Okay. And they would show up. And I didn't give them a dime at any point. I gave them a lot of praise and a lot of thank yous, but you know, so if you really want to get your leaders and your team re-energized, do these exercises with them. The other thing that you'll get out of this is you will be able to identify people who need more from you, more training, more support, whatever it is. You'll be able to identify people who maybe aren't right for the position that they're in. So you can find someone who is right for those positions. So the value of this to your company and to you personally is significant. And by the way, speaking of that personal value, they're going to develop better skills as employees and as leaders. So we talked about in the very beginning of this conversation that so many CEOs feel like they're doing it all themselves. They, they're making all the decisions, they're figuring everything out. A lot of the CEOs I talk to say that they're making sales because their sales team isn't making sales. This is a way to re-engage them and get them vitally involved in your company. So once you have all that, when you're talking to them, what's the value that you provide to them? So the woman who was selling the houses, well, the value, yeah, sure, it's a house, but remember, most of her market didn't want a house. So what's the value? Well, those buyers were at a higher risk for diabetes and heart disease, for example. Did you know that being in nature, and this is true, it's according to Harvard research, being in nature provides some of the greatest relief of the best heart medications that are available? So what if you bought a house that was surrounded by nature? And what if that house had an office where you could work sometimes, but be in the house with your family, something that was a thing pre-COVID. But what if you had that and you could go out and walk in the grass, reduce your stress, slow your heart rate down, and you could actually improve your health by buying this house? That was the connection that we made. One of our buyers was talking to one of our salespeople, and she knew how to have the conversation. She knew the data because she'd been taught. And she said, if you bought one of these houses, would your family, your parents maybe come and spend time with you? And he said, my dad is no longer with us. And, they continued the conversation. And the bottom line was his dad had died at 54 from heart disease. And he was turning 54 in a few months. And he was really worried. What happens if I, like my dad, die of heart disease at 54? What happens to my children and my wife? And all of these concerns came up. Well, the transformation that we provide is a house that's in nature, and how they benefit is they have direct access to living in a way that was like some of the best medications that were available. Do you know your ideal buyers this way? And do you know your product? So when Carol sent me the list of people who were registered for today, I went and looked at some of your websites, and I recommend that you do that too. Is your messaging, and I don't call it marketing, I don't like that word, but we're not going to get into that. I call it strategic messaging. Is your messaging about the transformation you provide that benefits the ideal buyer? Is it about your ideal buyer? Or is it about your product and service or your company? We've been around for 87 years. Nobody cares. We have the best printer. Yeah, but anybody could say that. Might not be true, but anyone could say that. But when you say to somebody who's worried about dying from heart disease or living with diabetes or dying from diabetes, we can help you with that. They're going to listen. So in the example of the real estate developer, our strategic messaging didn't say one word about lighting or granite or fixtures or anything like that. We had videos on our website about how you could reduce your risk of heart attack, about how you could reduce the effects of diabetes, how you could prevent your children from taking drugs. Those are the kinds of things, those were the videos on the homepage of our website. Our brochures talked about it. What are the 7 things you can do right now to reduce your risk of diabetes or heart attack or whatever? That developer went from $0 revenue in a 12-month period to $602 million 12 months later. Because she stopped talking about herself and her product and service, and she started talking about the value of knowing her company. She became their trusted advisor. And when somebody gives you valuable information and doesn't try to sell you, what happens is you lean in. Tell me more. Tell me more. You're leaning in, you're looking for more. And when they're buying, even if they're not buying right now, but let's say in a month or two, they're ready to buy, because even when they were a hard no, they discovered that you were somebody who really cared about them, not just getting your hand in their wallet. They're not going to go to the guy down the street to buy. They're going to come to you to buy. So the last part of it is, how do you provide value to them so that you know how to say to them that you're interested in them, not just their money. What I call this is owning your market. A lot of companies, and maybe your company, plays in your market. Yeah, we've got a bunch of competitors and we're trying to get our market share, and we're playing in our market. We're participating in our market. What's up with that? Own your market. You are the industry leader. Own your market. Be that valuable resource for your ideal buyers. When you do that, then you know what you need. You can make intelligent decisions. So every single person in this room doesn't need the same solutions. You shouldn't buy all of those things that are coming at you right now. But when you buy the right ones, because you know what they are, one, you cut your costs dramatically because you're not out buying things that are never going to work for you. And two, you start hitting your targets. You start bringing in those ideal buyers that you really, really want. So I want to stop for 1 second, and I want to ask you to unmute yourselves and ask me. We don't have a ton of time because I want to tell you about the strategy that I want you to download that you can use just quickly. But I want any questions that you have.
Deborah, can you please finish the story of Richard Branson, because it's so good?
Okay. What part of the story do you want me to finish?
Where you brought in the performance arts.
Okay, so I did an analysis of Richard Branson, and I found out all of the things that he cared about. Now, my competition, really all they were doing was glitz and glamour, taking him to baseball games with the Red Sox. Is that what's in Boston? Wherever that was. And, sending him packages of live lobsters with little lobster tags on them that said, Boston or whatever. It was all glitz and glamour. There was nothing real about it. So I had done an analysis of him. What did he need? One of the things that he wanted is he wanted all of his employees to be trained in performing arts. So if somebody showed up at the counter and it was their birthday, he didn't want them to just say, "Oh, I see it's your birthday, happy birthday." He wanted them to burst into song in a very dramatic way. So for those of you who don't know Sir Richard, he is very edgy. And to be honest, I wasn't very edgy at the time. I'm a lot more edgy now, but I wouldn't accuse myself of that. But I said, okay, we've got to be edgy, and he wants performing arts. And so he was getting near the decision time, coming to San Francisco, and I said, it's going to be important to him to be surrounded by a culture that is edgy and fun. And we put together this plan, and I have no pictures of this because my team, we all agreed we would ignore it as though it was just how we live life in the Bay Area. So no one was there to take pictures or anything. But when he got off of the airplane and we're moving down the people mover at SFO, coming at us is a woman dressed in a huge, beautiful Victorian red dress with a massive red hat. And she's just going down the people mover like, this is how we roll. My team and I ignored her completely as though she didn't exist. And, you know, he and his team were like, what? What's this? This is weird, but nobody said anything. And then when we got to the hotel, we had a ballerina dressed in red dancing in the lobby when they got up in the morning, dressed in red, performing as though this is how it happens in the Bay Area. When we brought him back to the hotel at one point, we had a male performer dressed as a female in a beautiful red cocktail dress, lounging on the bench in front of the hotel, painting her nails red. At a restaurant, we had 5 children dressed in red tops and shorts, bouncing red balls in unison. At this point, they've, you know, caught on that something's going on. But because we knew him so well, we were able to do things like that. And then, of course, we did some more practical things, like, for example, he needed to train his people, both the pilots and the flight attendants, but just people in general. We found a training facility for him to do that. All of the things that he was going to need to do to make his new airline successful, we thought through it from his angle. And instead of doing silly things like sending him live lobsters, we actually provided him with real solutions. The other thing that we did that was massively important to him is all of the other areas were throwing money at him, hundreds of millions of dollars. Remember, I didn't have access to anything like that. So we hosted a party and invited the Fortune 100 and 500 CEOs from the Bay Area. There were about 50 of them who showed up, and we put together deals for him where he could make money. One example, at that time, if you remember the Leap pads for kids, we put together a deal with Leap Pad so that the pockets of his airline seats would have one of those devices in it. So if there was a kid sitting there, they had something that they could do that was educational and fun. We put together deals that would actually make his company stronger, rather than one time, we're just going to throw this cash at you to get you to say yes, which created a much bigger success for him than one-time infusion of cash. That's because we went through that exercise that I just took you through and focused on him, not on us. Was that the story you wanted to go into? Okay. All right. So I want to take you through this, but any quick questions, and Yvonne, jump in and let me know if we have a hard stop at the top of the hour, or if we want to run a little long, if that's going to be a problem.
We don't have a hard stop, so go ahead.
Okay. So anyone have any questions before I move on to this? No? No questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm a branding expert, so I view each brand. Number one is they have to be grounded in their DNA, and that is, what does their brand stand for? And then they have to understand their target audience inside out, knowing their pain points, their dreams, their worries, their fears, and then provide solutions for their pain points. So it's one thing to cater to what they need, but there's also a principle, and that is you have to maintain, I call it, you have to really be loyal to your own DNA. That's when you have a good match of the ideal client match, because your own DNA is have to stand for something, and then you have to offer services and products or whatever based on what value you stand by. So this is sales. I admire your mastery of the sales by serving their needs. But how do you reconcile your own brand DNA?
Well, so the thing that I encounter, and I always hesitate to say 100% of the time, but looking over my career in the past 30 years, I'm going to say 100% of the time when I start working with a company, and many of them will not agree with me in the beginning, but they ultimately do. I will say that they are focused on themselves. They're focused on their product or service. And it's fine to be committed to your DNA. I mean, like for me, in my company, I'm committed to my DNA in that there are some types of businesses that I will not work with. That's vitally important to me because it would take me out of integrity. So I think that's fine, but where the companies that I see, they focus on themselves. They're more interested in themselves. They're more interested in their company. They're more interested in their product and service than they are interested in what their ideal buyer really needs. And when I talk about strategic messaging, I am focused on what do they need. Like, for example, a perfect example, the realtor. Most realtors, if not 100% of them in the world, want to tell you about their houses. I sell houses, let me tell you about my houses. Now, some of them, their DNA is luxury. Some of them, their DNA is bargain. Some are in the middle, whatever. But they want to tell you about their houses. And for the most part, that 3% is interested in buying a house because they need a house for whatever reason. But for the most part, it's not the house that is going to draw people in. As for example, do you know any realtor, other than the one I've told you about today, who would go to events, health events, where they're going to talk about preventing heart disease, looking to make a sale of a house? I suspect not. So the way I recognize it is, yes, at some point, you're going to tell your ideal buyer why your company is great and your product or service is great, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, you tell them what they care about. You talk to them about what they care about. And that's how I reconcile it.
Yes, that's what I meant too. It's not about, interested in yourself and impose yourselves onto others, but there is a line between emotionally manipulative, using fear or using grandiose dreams and let them buy a utopia. I think it's a form of sales. It's a lot of them how to use guilt or fear and all that, or dreams. Yes.
No, that's not what I'm talking about at all. We know their pain so that we can help them solve their pain. We don't use fear to manipulate, or at least I don't. That would not fit within my integrity to do that at all. But if I know what your real concern is, like let's say your real concern is that you haven't made any money or that your revenues have dropped dramatically. My knowing that and understanding the reasons for it helps me. One, if you're not an ideal client or an ideal buyer, I probably wouldn't talk to you at all. I would say, look, I'm not right for you. Somebody else probably is, and that's where you should go. But if I know what your pain is, and I know that I can solve it, then I have a responsibility to tell you that. Like, for example, you know, the realtor that we've been talking about, if she didn't know their pain, and she didn't know that there's a lot of research from Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, that talks about what she was offering as a value to them, then she's doing them a disservice by not sharing that with them. So I'm sorry, but we're going to have to, I want to tell you about this plan that I want to offer you. You can download it if you go to my website. And by the way, Deberah is spelled weird. But if you go to my website, deberahbringelson.com/2-phase-plan, and maybe Carol and Yvonne, we can send them this link. They can download it. The exercise that we went through with your ideal buyers that I recommended that you go through with your team, you can do this with any issue that you're facing. And this is all done for you. You don't have to do anything. So there's 2 phases. There's one for the CEO to lead your leaders through this. There's one for your leaders to lead their teams through it. And I've drafted the emails. You may have to tweak them a little bit to make them personal, put in your name and whatever, but the emails are done for both phase 1 and phase 2. There's checklists that are done for both the CEO and the leaders. So check it off. Did I get this done? I mean, it's very detailed. I give you specific implementation instructions, 3 implementation videos. And I said they're about 5 minutes each. So it's not, you know, forever. And then there are 5 extra support videos. So like phase 1, it's a workshop with the CEO and leaders. Here's all of the details. Here are some pro tips. Like one of my pro tips for the CEO, you're going to do this with your leaders in the room or in Zoom, however you want to do it. But you, in addition to accomplishing the goals, you also should be evaluating your leaders. Are they willing to step up? Are they willing to take the lead? Are they willing to make decisions? Do they need more training? So these are just some pro tips that if I were leading it for you, these are some things that I would be doing. Here's a checklist, you know, everything you need. And, you know, some people are going to be stressed. So hopefully you're not going to have crying, but have tissues there just in case. Hershey's Kisses. Every time somebody does something really great or says something really great, toss them a Hershey's Kiss as a reward. Make it fun, make it engaging. By the way, as silly as this may sound, people really love this. One of the things when I lead these that I love to do is use them as points, and then I give a gift to the person who has the greatest points, you know. So you get the Hershey's Kisses to eat, plus you get a gift certificate for a massage or a dinner or whatever, a bottle of champagne, whatever. Both levels, the CEO level and the leader level, have all of these items. I've put it all together for you. Here's the invitation letter to the leaders. It's already been written. There are a couple of things that you're going to need to put in, like the date and the time and the location. But all of that is there for you. All you have to do is copy and paste it. Here's the agenda that you set out to accomplish these things. These are the things that you want to get done as you're doing this. So the agenda is done for you. And then how do you know that you're done? You've gone through each agenda item, and if it's not complete, you note that it's not complete so that it can get followed up on. And then there's a clear agreement and understanding of action items that, because you don't want to just have this nice meeting. You want it to mean something. So what are the next steps? Who's involved? Who's responsible? what is the desired outcome and what are the dates that the outcomes are to be done. As I said, each level has 3, here's what you do first, here's what you do second, here's what you do third, videos that you can use for yourself, but also the leaders level has this as well, these 3. And then I also have extra support, things that, these are all again about 5 minutes, but these are 5 videos, things that you need to know that could help you have a more successful strategy session. This sounds very basic and simple, and you can say, well, you know, yeah, we have meetings all the time. Okay, do you have meetings where you sit around and talk about problems and, you know, what's going on? Or do you have really focused workshops that have an end goal in mind and that gets everyone involved in? And as we talked about earlier, it's not just doing this, it's re-engaging your people. That's how I got 47 volunteers to help me inspire Richard Branson to go from a hard no to signing a contract. That the Bay Area Council did an analysis and they said that the value, the economic value to the Bay Area from that one deal was $350 million a year, every year, in not just, you know, taxes and airline fees, but tourism value, restaurant value, all of the things that's involved in that. That's how you get your team re-engaged in making decisions. And if we go back to the beginning of what we talked about, you know, that you've got all of these things coming at you, that your leaders aren't making decisions, that your employees are frozen and scared, that your buyers, you know, look at that list of what your buyers are saying and doing. Have a conversation on each one of those. How do we address it? How do we add our value to our buyers so it makes it easier for them to say yes to us and gets the word out that we're the company that owns this market because we're going to solve your problems. We're not going to tell you just about our widget or our service. We're going to become your partner in making your business successful the way that we became Richard Branson's partner in making his business successful. So I know we're over time. I really, really invite you to download this. As I said, hopefully we can get the link sent out to you. And when you get it, you know I went quickly. When you get it, if you have questions about how to make it more successful, email me. Deberah at DeberahBringelson.com. Just remember the spelling is a little weird. Okay.
Thank you, Deberah. Thank you very much for that insightful, informative presentation. Thank you all for attending. I will send out the link that Deberah referred to in her presentation, and we look forward to seeing you at another ACGSV event very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.